All right, good. Well, listen, I've always said that me, Charlemagne, and Joe are like the three that are doing it in the culture. I know there's other guys out there doing it. No shade to Flex or Ebro, but there's three of us that shake it up on a regular basis. And one of them has had a lot of issues. You know, right here on this show, we interviewed Tahiri Jose. And remember, she said what she said about what he didn't want us to say right here on our show on his birthday. This is what she said.
That relationship left me with a fractured rib, a broken nose because somebody was sending him a message, and I used to always say, "Yo, stop beefing out there." I'm out there still working, and he hit me on that nose and then pushed me down a flight of stairs. I remember having to talk him out of letting me go that day. I remember having a plan to leave because the reason why he was so upset was because I was already leaving.
Yeah, I remember that day.
On his birthday, though. On his birthday.
And after we dropped that, he went to his show and told me to lose my number, and I did. And then he unfollowed me, and I unfollowed him because that's what girls do when they fight on Instagram. But either way, I don't hate Joe Budden. None of us here hate him. In fact, we actually love and respect his podcast. But the podcast is having a lot of issues. So those of you who've been watching it, Rory and Mal, his co-host, they left the show. And now there's new claims by this DJ, Olivia Dope, that there was sexual harassment. And so I'm not going to I can't play the video of Joe actually firing his co-host on the air or their responses and interviews to the firing of them on the show. Mind you, they were fired on the show, but they weren't there.
He fired empty chairs. How do you fire an empty chair? That is savage. That is savage. Wow.
Well, some would say that it's savage, but the thing is that Joe and his co-host, and I know a lot of you are watching saying, well, Jason, you have Blue and Damage. They didn't necessarily start with you. Let me just say this. I am putting my past in my new book, How I Stopped Giving a F and Started Winning. So you will understand for me why decisions have been made and changes on this show. But the one thing that I will say that came out of watching Joe's burnout on his podcast is that those people couldn't have had a real relationship, because I don't know that even with the past changes on this show, Blue and Damage, that me and my co-hosts would have burnt each other down on the internet like that. I just don't understand how they got there, but the firing of empty chairs was a lot for me, and some would say that's the narcissism of Joe Budden.
I saw the video of the response, right? Because the empty chair video was so inflammatory. And the response I heard from, I don't know if it was Mal, the brown one. Is that Mal?
Mal.
Did I get that?
Yeah, Mal.
Mal. Well, he was saying that he was supposed to get a percentage of what they make. But how do you know your percentage if you don't know what you make first? So he said it was basically, you cannot tell me I have a contract where I get 30% of something, but you don't tell me what the actual pie is. So how do I know my percentage? So he's claiming that Joe had a lack of transparency. And then Joe's response was, yup, thank you for your services. Like, he didn't even deny it. So they're all admitting that Joe didn't want to show the numbers. And to me, that's a little bit shady. You don't do that to your friends or even your coworkers. Yeah. Jason Lee would never do that to us. I know how much I'm getting paid, y'all. Don't worry about me.
And that's the difference between our situation and theirs, because if you he said it's a percentage-based income, and I hate to be digging in these people's personal lives, but it's on the internet and I seen it. And Joe said, okay, yeah, it's based on a percentage on what Joe Budden makes on a podcast. So there's a gray area there in the contract. Therefore, Jason, you own Hollywood Unlocked. If you got from a big brand $1 million and you said, I'm taking half of that and I'm putting it to the podcast, I would get a percentage off what you allocated for the podcast. So that's the gray area with all of this. It's like you really don't know what Joe decided to allocate for the podcast. So
he's not giving them any numbers, though. Like, Don't you need some kind of numbers? Like, throw me something. Tell me 100K, 200K, something.
Well, I don't know what their contracts say. And this is what I would say to anybody getting in business. I do have courses coming out. I was inspired by DJ Damage. I went and found the people to help me build the courses, because the one thing I feel like people miss in business, whether it's music business, the entertainment business, media business, is the business part, right? Get your contracts together. Before Blue and Damage started the show, not before Damage just was ride or die from the beginning. He just jumped in and helped out, and then we figured out. But we have agreements. And I will tell you, in this podcast, I'm not going to get into all our business here, but if we were to bring in a check for this podcast where the three of us sit, we share in that respectfully to our contract. We have transparency in our reporting. We make sure, I make sure with my team that there is a thorough accounting in every single penny that comes in as it relates to the deals that we have in place. So there's never a question. I think that sometimes when people start podcasts and there is no money, and you're building it from the beginning, some people later feel like some of that sweat equity should be worth more than what they agreed to. But when you sign off on whatever your deal is, it is what it is. But I will tell you, when they got the Patreon deal, let's back up. When Joe was first at Complex with academics and that whole thing fell apart, he felt like he was worth more money, probably worth more money than them. And I don't know. And then he left. Then he went and he did this thing with Rory Mal, and the podcast has become one of the biggest podcasts in the culture. They went over and did a deal with Spotify. And then Joe felt like he wasn't given enough money then. And we didn't hear from the guys then. So I don't know. Maybe they were cut in or not. Maybe he wanted more money than them then. I don't know. But then when they did that Patreon deal, I was like, this is where it's going to get tricky, because this is a subscription-based platform where you're going to get, $5, $10, $15, $99 a listener. You have tons of listeners. It's going to be a lot of money. And typically when a lot more money comes in, things get a little funny. And so I'm not going to say I saw this coming, because I did think that Rory and Mal were ride or dies for Joe. And I love Joe Budden as a podcaster, but I have to tell you, after the way he handled the show that we did with Tahiri, I always felt like he was going to get in his own way. And I think right now, based on how he treated them, because I don't see them coming back, he got in his own way.
I do.
Is it over, guys? Is it over? Do you think the podcast is over for them?
It seems over. It does. I don't think the podcast is over, but them being a unit together does seem over. But Jason, I want to ask you, because we are, I haven't been on Hollywood Unlocked, the podcast, since the beginning. Was there ever a time where you felt like somebody you worked with felt like they deserved more than what they deserved? Because I feel like that's Joe's standpoint, where they're like, oh, we built this with you. In his mind, it's like, no, y'all didn't. Have you ever been there as a person that owns Hollywood Unlocked?
Yeah, I've been there. And like I said, it's gonna be very detailed in my next book. Because as I was talking through this chapter of the book and really working with the publisher to put this together, because I always want to make sure that in everything I do, that I'm respecting the people that have helped me build my brand. You know what I mean? The people that were here before both of you helped me build the show. But at some point, people have to acknowledge and give me my flowers in the fact that I have built Hollywood Unlocked beyond this podcast. This podcast is one part of the brand. There are multiple parts of the brand. There's the Instagram, the Facebook. We have, Gagging with Jason Lee now. We've had a robust social media digital platform, and this show has grown and has gone through many changes. But the one thing that I will say is that our audience has stuck with us and continue to grow and expand. And the extensions of this brand have continued to grow after other people. I think what happens is that people, and I'm not shading anybody when I say this, but there's a lot of people out here with entitlement. And I get it. Maybe in your mind, you do believe you're entitled to more than you got. But if you felt that way now, you should have thought through that way then, because you can't wait until you build the skyscraper and get to the penthouse and say, I should own some of this. Like you just realized the value. I realized the value of Hollywood Unlocked. I realized the value of the show. I realized the value of everything I've ever done from the very beginning, because I believed in myself. The Joe Budden podcast would and could and still should go on without those two other guys, because ultimately it is the Joe Budden podcast. We tune in to hear what Joe Budden has to say. Now, I will tell you where Joe Budden is up. And Joe, this is where I personally think that you've gone astray, is your narcissism has met its match with the internet, and you are online trying to change the public's perception of you and opinion of you and how this is all happening in real time amidst videos of you firing your co-hosts in absent chairs and then talking about them publicly. I would never talk about my former co-host publicly in a disrespectful way. And we've had experiences at this show that y'all gonna be gagging when you read my book, because I was the bad guy for so long, and you'll understand that running a business sometimes means you have to take it on the chin even when you're not in the wrong.
But Jason, this is one thing I will say though that I think people keep losing me on. In this case, I've listened to the other co-hosts, And never once have I heard them say we were fighting over more. They're saying he didn't pay us the initial agreement. And so I think for me, that's where all sympathy for he who built the kingdom goes away. Because if you say 25% and you don't pay the 25% that you agreed to, that's not about not respecting an empire. That's just a breach of contract. It sounded to me that Joe's head got big and he thought that he could fudge with a pre-existing agreement because he was like, oh, maybe I didn't value my contribution enough. So it was actually him that was trying to tweak things. And they were like, at least pay us what we agreed to. So that makes me a little bit nervous because I know here, I've never not gotten paid what I said I was going to get paid. You know what I mean? So I think him moving the goalpost might be a bigger issue for them. Like, damn, you don't even respect me enough to keep the pre-existing agreement.
Yeah, I hear you. And to piggyback off of that, I do also feel like he's in some type of tunnel vision because they're not. The whole big thing is there's no transparency. How much money was brought in, so we just know that we're getting our percentage. Joe's like, I'm grabbing bags from here. I'm grabbing bags from here. I'm bigging this. And it's like, yeah, you are doing that, bro, but also understand what's coming from this side. So he's just like, how dare you audit me? How dare you, as my friends, thinking I'm doing y'all wrong? And they're like, bro, we don't even know if you're doing wrong or right. We're asking to just see so we can make.
See, and that's the thing right there. If damage, okay, but this goes back to like the person's integrity. I don't know Joe's business acumen. I don't know Joe's business acumen or integrity.
Same.
I was going to quit this show when Giovanni and Melissa were in and out, and it was like double dutch over here. I was going to quit the show. Damage stepped up to the plate. Didn't ask for a contract. He said, we'll figure it out. Let me just jump in and help. When people got your back like that, you don't turn around and say, oh, I got this new show gagging. I'm tired of this show. I'm out. And honestly, my co-hosts and the audience are literally the only reason why I'm still doing this show. Because ultimately, I have been doing this now for 5 years. And when you do something for 5 years, you do want to do other things and try other things. But I will say, like, the camaraderie I have with you, Blue, with you, Damage, the intelligence that I think we bring to conversations that are difficult now, absolutely, and still some of the fun times that we have in talking our shit, and the audience that keeps showing up every week, literally the only reason why I'm still here. But I will tell you, you know, at some point you can make so much money that the money's not really a factor, because I know how to get money. And I will say with this show, with the agreements that we do have in place, I do make sure that when I say we go down to the dollar and to the dime, I make sure that when we are going over every check that's coming in, every deal that's being made, everything that I am contractually obligated to do, that I make sure that I deliver on that. And it's not just because I'm contractually bound and you deserve it. It's because of my integrity. I don't ever want to feel taken advantage of. And I will say that there have been times I've been on the other side of this coin where I've gone above and beyond to make sure everybody else is good and been left holding the bag or been left looking crazy. And so I'm not at all making an excuse for Joe, because I've been watching this train wreck play out. I think to all of Joe's partners, you all look crazy because you're benefiting from the fallout of one of the best cultural pillars in the podcast world. And I think you need to rein Joe in and sit him down in a room with one light, with one spotlight on his forehead like he's being interrogated. And you need to ask him, what is it that you want to get out of this? Because Rory and Mal, they out here talking. And baby, when I tell you the tea is hot and I am paying attention, it's embarrassing, Joe. You built something that is just literally dismantling in front of all of our eyes. And to watch you go down in flames like this, I know Charlemagne is sitting over there at the Breakfast Club sipping on his English breakfast tea, baby, because, you know, y'all don't like each other. And that's what happens when the girls start losing stuff.
This is, and I hear you, but this is the crazy part. Is it going down in flames, or is this good for the content game? That's the biggest question. Like all this happening,
it's good for the content game, Damage. But look, what I've learned when people attack me online, this goes away. The news changes every 15 minutes. So this may last for a week at best. But I mean, you have bombs dropping on little kids in other parts of the world. People are going to forget about this little podcast when you measure it up to what's going on in the world, right? Trump is building his own social media platform. What is she talking about? The news is going to change so fast. Like this, after all those guys responded to what was going on with the damn podcast, something else popped up. This DJ who DJed one of my parties, by the way, Olivia Dope, she's actually a dope DJ. She hopped on social media and blasted Joe, claiming that she quit working for his network, the Joe Budden network, after several instances of sexual harassment. I'm gonna say alleged, which she calls traumatizing and embarrassing. We got a video of what she said. Take a look.
On January 18th, 2021, Joe Budden sat in on a recording of the female-led podcast I was a part of and continuously made sexual suggestive remarks to me that made me extremely uncomfortable, as well as fearful of dampening the mood if I didn't laugh along while he made those sexual remarks to me. Those moments were not only, excuse me, those moments not only live on the internet forever, it also forced me in the decision of quitting the podcast.
This is the problem that I have with these kind of things. And I'm not saying anything negative towards you, Olivia Dope, but we work in entertainment. This is a different industry. This is not Taco Bell or Chipotle or the post office or the bus metro line. This is an environment where we have robust conversations about sucking. On this show alone, I talked about midgets. I talked about getting my thrown up on. I talked about twins and watching them each other. We go from how you raise your kids to Azalea digging up a dead cat to people sucking blood off their partners. This is the world we work in. And so I'm telling you right now, Damage and Blue, if you both ever want to sue me for talking about the cocaine out of a goat's, it is.
Oh my God.
I don't know that you can do that, but we may talk about that one day if Azalea gets hungry. And I just don't want to feel like I have to restrict the vivid imagination that God blessed me with. Now, I'm not saying this was her situation with Joe, because it doesn't sound like she gave us any real meat. And when reports like this come out, Damage and Blue, the audience that works regular jobs hear it and go, oh my God, what did he say that was sexually suggestive, when we don't know exactly what he said or didn't say? I don't know.
Well, she put out a long video and she did say specifically what he said, but regardless, you talking about Jason, you talking about who you and what you're doing in your personal life, that's one thing. But to be a boss of someone and say, oh, I want to you, or I always wanted to
say that
you,
to her? Did he say that?
What I'm saying is, he said something along those lines. I don't want to misquote. We can go find the actual quote. But it's different when your boss, somebody that owns the network, is saying that. So it's not more of a conversation. It's kind of like,
that's true.
Do I just go along with this? Like,
as somebody who has been sexually harassed at Home Depot and in the industry, when you get sexually harassed at Home Depot, it can be traumatizing, but for me it was mostly funny and became a story I told at dinner parties. When it happened in the industry, it was a lot more subtle, and that was actually terrifying, because it was like, oh, this person has just dropped a really big hint, and if I don't respond in the right way, I might never work in this town again. And so there's these little moments where you're like, I want to have a reaction, but I recognize that this person knows several other people who I'm connected to, so I kind of have to swallow it. And then when you see that person being dragged, then you're like, oh, okay, you're all turning against him. Now I have an opportunity to slip this in. So I completely understand where Olivia's coming from, because when it happens in real life, it's a lot more blatant, but when it happens in the industry, the stakes are a lot higher. I get it. I get why she waited.
And I don't know about this particular situation, but I've been around when I've seen some of my coworkers in the entertainment game be sexually harassed. And when the person that is coming from holds some kind of power, everybody does this nervous, cringy laugh. And nobody really says they're uncomfortable until it's some time later where they're alone and like, hey, Damage, that really made me feel uncomfortable. And I don't really know what to do because he keeps making these kind of jokes. And at some point as men, we got to realize that some of these sex jokes ain't that damn funny. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, no one's getting it. So you might think you're really telling a joke, but somebody's over there making that cringy laugh and pulling somebody aside. Like, I don't know if I want to be here anymore. So I just think everybody just has to be aware of what's happening and keep their eyes open. I don't know about the Olivia Dope situation. And from what it sounds like is he said he wanted to her. And she said, I don't have a rapport with him like that. I don't know him like that for him to say that. And she felt uncomfortable. That's the story.
Well, I don't know what shoe's going to drop next on you, Joe. I mean, you've had a lot of relationship issues. You've had people come out and say that you beat them. You had baby mama issues. You've had now your colleagues don't like you because you fire them when they're not even at work. And now you have a DJ saying that you made her feel uncomfortable. I don't know what else is to come of this. I don't know if Joe's partnerships will last or sustain this. I mean, this is a lot, and oftentimes when you see narcissists like a Joe Budden go through a very public thing like this, and then seemingly lose it all, and I'm not praying that he loses anything. I want him to be as successful as he can be. I don't get to make that determination. I'm only one person, one voice. And I tell you, when the more successful you get, they try to take me down every day. I just did a whole post on Instagram where they said I got HIV. They said I have no network.
What?
They say I'm a pedophile. They say I'm a rapist. They say I'm a colorist. I'm transphobic. The internet will say whatever it wants to say, and it will get life if you breathe life into it. My thing is, you can't be successful and rise to the top of whatever your industry is and not be able to handle or weather the storm. I think the difference between how Joe is handling and how me and other people have handled it is he's just very like, the narcissism is just so clear, and I don't know that he believes that he owns anything in any of all of that, nor I don't think does he care. So I mean, I wish him the best of luck. I haven't listened to the podcast after you told me to delete his number, so I deleted that too. And I don't hate him. I'm just sitting around waiting to see what happens.
Yeah, and to piggyback on all of that, man, everybody has to have that that accountability to say sorry. If it was really a joke and you meant it to just be funny and somebody felt some type of way about it, this is for anybody, not just Joe. Have that humility to say sorry. I apologize. I didn't mean it that way. And I feel like that can go a long way as well, because if it's supposed to be a joke and you didn't mean it, apologize.
That goes against the nature of the beast, though. Narcissists don't ever think they do anything wrong. So he doesn't think there's anything to
Oh,
apologize for.